What's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about black and white photography. First, we need to back it up just a bit. Last week, I recorded a tutorial on black and white photography. I went through the whole process, talking in front of the camera, doing the whole spiel, explaining what's what to set your camera to. So the tutorial that I recorded was totally fine, but it didn't feel authentic enough, as in I didn't really believe what I was telling you guys. I didn't like the pictures that I was taking, but I felt like a fraud because the truth is I don't know a lot about black and white photography, or I didn't, and I want it to seem like I did. But I think it's important that we be honest with each other, and I don't know a lot, but I'm trying to learn. And this past few weeks, I've been taking pictures, going out, reading, listening to podcasts, listening to tutorials, reading articles, and I think I have somewhat of an understanding of what it means to take a good black and white photo. So we're going to try to figure this out today.
So ordinary photographic procedure cannot be employed. Instead, we use a shadow technique.
The first thing we need to talk about with black and white photography are the shadows. I was recently going to go out and shoot my friend Madeline at a couple locations around town, but beforehand I went the day before to scout out the locations. And the spots that I chose to shoot at had everything to do with the shadows and the light coming through certain areas, whether it's leaves or the break of a building and how it cuts in half. But the reason I did that is because I wanted there to be that contrast between light and dark. And when you're shooting in the middle of the day, you really have to look to find it. I wanted to know where the shadows were going to be, at what time, and this would just help plan the shoot a little bit more, and I could be more prepared for when she actually got there. So what I did was I used this app called Sunseeker, and what it does is it just tracks the sun and lets you know at what point in the day it's going to be where. So as you can see, at 3 p.m. it'll be right there. Well, it's already 3 p.m. right now, and then it kind of just lets you know where it's going to be, what angle you can expect to find, so you can push the shoot back if the lighting's not going to be right. Why are the shadows so important? Because it's black and white, you're going to be dealing with dark and light in your shot, and how those two interact with each other can make a good photo or a bad photo. For instance, you don't want just overblown all bright light for a black and white photo because it's all going to look blown out. You're not going to be able to distinguish anything. It's not going to be very appealing to the eyes. But if you put these two elements together in the right way, that's when you're going to get the most out of black and white photography, because you're going to have images and subjects and parts of your shot that are more defined and they stand out, pulling them apart from each other and telling a story or just looking like a real photograph. Now you can play with the shadows and control them a bit in post, but it helps even more if you plan your shot accordingly, get it in camera, and then in the post process it's a little easier and your picture will look better. And I specifically chose to shoot in color so that I could have room to manipulate the colors in the post process. And what I mean by that is, if she's standing in front of a green background, she's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and the background is green, I can change the contrast and the tones in each color, even though it's black and white. So as you can see here, I changed her eyes a little bit. I changed the background, playing with the green, and her hair, which was more along the yellow tint. I didn't really realize that. I thought you should shoot in monochrome because you're going out, if you're intentionally going out to shoot black and white, I figured, well, okay, then you go and take the black and white photos. But shooting in color can allow you more manipulation in the post process. With the case of my friend, I chose her eyes because her eyes were very blue, and so it was easy to kind of bring them out and make for an interesting picture. Point number 2 is the texture and the colors that you're working with. So another thing that I realized is that if you are taking portraits or if you're taking pictures of buildings, architecture, whatever it is, if you're looking at the building in terms of the color, then you're looking at it in the wrong way, obviously. But what I mean by that is, if the side of the wall is flat, it's smooth, and it's a certain type of color, that's not going to be anything definable in the post process, and the image isn't going to look as interesting as it would if you found a more textured, rough edged, weathered look, because all those little creases and the shadows created will be brought out in the post process. So when you increase the contrast, it's really going to bring it out and it's going to look kind of that old weathered timeless feel. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't choose flat surfaces or smooth backdrops, whatever it is, as long as the subject that's in front of that is very dynamic and interesting. Compositionally speaking, black and white photography, your subject has to be the focus and it has to look fresh and alive, because otherwise it's going to be a boring image. Black and white photography already seems outdated to some people looking on Instagram. Wherever you're posting your pictures, you have to figure out how to draw people in. This is the part of the tutorial where I contradict myself entirely. Earlier I said it was good to shoot in color because then you can manipulate it in post. Well, what I challenge you to do is, after you've done that for a little while and you're comfortable with editing in Lightroom or whatever it is, shoot in monochrome and buy a cheap film camera and load it up with black and white film. That's pretty cheap as well. But nothing will force you to learn how light works in relation to your camera, how your lens works, how to compose shots, than having a limited number of pictures to take and knowing that it's going to be in black and white. So it really forces you to look for the shadows, look for the contrast, look for interesting subjects. And I guarantee that whenever you go back to shooting digital, you'll have a better understanding of what you're doing, how to work your camera, and what kind of pictures you like taking. So I came across this photography book on Ansel Adams. I'll link to the book below, but it's a really good look at how he took some of the photos, why he took some of the photos, and it kind of goes into the process of like what you should think about when you're going to take a black and white photo. Whether it's a landscape shot or of people, these photos feel lived in and timeless, which is what I think black and white photography has the power to do. So one of the reasons why the pictures that Ansel Adams took stood out so much is because they were just of everyday things like valleys, mountains, people every once in a while. But he photographed it in a way to make it look like something that you're not used to seeing. And I think that's what's so hard about photography right now, is because there's so much out there and there's so many photographers putting their work out on Instagram or blogs, whatever it is, that it's hard to make your work stand out. And so I think if anything from this Ansel Adams lesson, it's that you need to focus on how to make it stand out. How are you going to define your work over everyone else's? I hope you liked this tutorial. Comment below if you want to see more photo stuff, and if so, what kind of photo stuff. Like, share, you know the drill. I'll see you in the next one.